He's angry about mortgages. It's Angry Mortgage. He's swearing. He's cursing loud. He's old. He's opinionated. And he's been doing this so damn long. This program is about mortgages, and this is mortgage advice, but the advice may not apply to your situation. Contact licensed mortgage professionals for specific recommendations before you make decisions about mortgages. You may not agree with Ron, but if you don't, he thinks you're wrong. Oh, and did we say there is a lot of swearing?
And we are back on the air with one of our favorite guests, Scott Terrio, Michalos, Trustees in Bankruptcy. What would we call you? Insolvency Trustees, we call you now.
Licensed Insolvency Trustee is the formal term.
Licensed Insolvency
We're
Trustee.
lit, Ron.
You're lit. Yeah, you are lit.
These days, yes, we're lit.
Now, Michalos is the number one consumer bankruptcy trustee in Ontario. You do the most units.
And we just do consumer. That's why I think we're the largest one that just does consumers, no business.
Doesn't Michalos do business? No.
We don't do business filings.
No business at all.
Well, I mean, a lot of the personal filings we do are because of business, but
right.
We don't actually file business filings because you mostly don't need to.
So, just a really quick question, because that is interesting to me. So that business receivership is a whole different world, right?
Yeah, that's corporate. We call that corporate. And so there's consumer and corporate. And if you are filing, especially big businesses, you need a team, right? Like like we have people in the office there's a whole team of people that do stuff for ours too. But that's like a full court press, like a gang of lawyers almost, because it's a mess, and it's a lot of it's to do with court, right? And you got all kinds of creditors and maybe different countries and all this stuff. Like it's just it's big and complicated, expensive, messy.
Sometimes it's easier just to do one thing. I mean, that's sort of what we've done our whole existence. We've done residential mortgages. We do a sliver of commercial mortgages, but we've just done residential mortgages.
Just get good at one thing and do a lot of it.
Just do as much as you can. That's the bottom line. I like that a lot. By the way, we're not trying to do every possible permutation of a mortgage too. Like we don't pretend. Yes, we're also reverse mortgage experts. Like we know reverse mortgages, but that's not the thrust of our business.
Yeah.
Okay, so you could, but just do one thing and do it as well as you can. Do as many of it as you can.
Yep.
All right. So Scott's one of my favorite guests. Here's by the way, we're not here advertising bankruptcy or insolvency. We're not here advertising Scott's firm, although it's a great firm. It's a terrific firm. One of the like I said, number one, the province. Why we talk about this stuff is that what goes on in the insolvency world is very, very important at a ground level of what's going on in the economy. I'm dead serious.
It's households.
That's
what I tell people.
Yeah, it's households.
Because if you know what's happening in households, you can know a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes I discover things I didn't know. Like there was a time during COVID and post COVID, you guys were just done. You were doing nothing.
Well, just not much, right? Like it was just it was so down because when COVID hit, actually people counterintuitively thought we must have been rocking and rolling. Everybody's out of work. When you're out of work, you don't need us.
Right.
So we were meeting with a lot of people. Like I'm talking 15 a day for the first few months of COVID. Like I was exhausted, but nobody was filing because we were saying to them, okay, well, once you get working, you need a stay of proceedings that is afforded to you via bankruptcy or a proposal, because otherwise your wages are going to get garnished. If you don't have wages to garnish, right, you're on COVID, CERB benefits, right, or whatever.
And then CERB also sort of got people through. And some people really some people made more money on CERB than when they were working, okay? Because they were giving CERB to kids.
Getting a raise.
They're giving CERB to kids, right? To teenagers.
Some households did well.
Yeah, some households did well. So,
yes.
So
they're not doing so well now because now CRA is saying, excuse me, what happened there?
But why we talk about this stuff is to understand at a very much a street level what's going on in the economy. Here's folks, every time you look at a report, every time you see GDP, every time you see unemployment, every time you see anything, you're seeing lagging information. Like some of that information was gathered 2 or 3 months ago.
Reports can't be live.
No, they're not by nature.
Somebody has to put them together and assemble it and analyze it.
And by the way, sometimes if people, like, I'm not talking about like, not TREB sales data. TREB sales data is damn accurate. I mean,
it's pretty recent.
It's super recent. So, but when people are telling you this is what happened in unemployment in April, well, half of that might have been March. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
Okay, like it's not that. It's harder to collate. It's harder to bring all that together.
Yeah.
So the reason I love talking to Scott is this is what's happening today. Scott's involved in what's happening this moment that you're going to learn more about in 3 months. Yeah. Like you're going to hear.
I met with 2 people this morning before I came here.
Yeah.
10 yesterday. Yeah.
So that's why we're not in the trustee business. We're not in the insolvency business, but we are very interested in letting you know what the hell to expect in the next 3 months.
Well, I sometimes say this, that you may know your neighbor very well because you've lived next door to your neighbor across the street for 30 years. You know nothing about their finances, I bet.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Until the day they move out. Till the day they move out.
All my neighbors on my street, I have no idea whether they're doing well or not. No idea. Can't tell. But in my work, we see everything.
Yeah.
Like when I meet with someone for half an hour or an hour, I know every single thing, that they've told me, which is generally everything, from, income and expenses, assets, debts, everything.
Gonna stop being married? You hear everything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Stuff like that too, where it's like, my marriage isn't great. If I'm doing, they got all this problem and I'm not sure we're going to be together in 6 months, like you don't get to see that.
No,
from anybody. I see it 10 times a day.
Yeah. And the biggest shift, Scott's talked to me about this, and it is profoundly interesting to me. The biggest shift Scott's encountered in the last 12 months and accelerating literally every quarter.
Even the last 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. Homeowners filing.
Yeah.
Because,
or calling at least.
Calling, and, they're
filing too. Yeah.
So, give me the contrast, like over some past years to this year.
Okay, so again, keeping in mind that our firm is all of Ontario.
Yep.
I'm in Toronto.
Yep.
So, and you and I talked about this at lunch, but I see the fewest homeowners of anybody in my firm because I'm in downtown Toronto. So, there are condo owners. A few people have houses, in the sort of GTA. But if you're in our Windsor office or London or whatever, there's a lot more homeowners, generally speaking, in the population. And so therefore, those offices would see more homeowners over the years. But all of us are seeing more homeowners now than we were a year ago.
And it's some of it's really startling, right?
Yes, very much so. And so during the housing boom, we didn't talk to a lot of homeowners. Like, we keep track, as we mentioned in the previous podcast a few months ago, our homeowners bankruptcy index, which is a big way of saying how many people that we file are homeowners, percentage.
Yep.
That percent topped out back in 2009, 10, Doug will probably correct me here, but something like that, at 30 or 33%. So fully a third of our filings were homeowners back then. That's 15 years ago now.
Yep.
It went down almost to zero during the housing boom.
So we're talking like 2 to 5%.
Less than 1.
Less than 1.
And
okay,
one month of August of 2 years ago, there was none.
None.
Not one.
There was none.
Something like that. Or maybe it was last August. I don't know. But regardless, it was here, and it slowly went here as house prices went up and as people got more wealthy on equity and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Don't need us. You got a house with lots of equity. You got all kinds of options. You don't need to file an insolvency because you could do other things.
Sure.
So it gradually went down, and stayed down for a long time, probably better part of 5-7 years at least. It is now back up, I believe, above 10. And again, Doug might shoot me if I get that wrong, but I think it's at 10, double digits. And I think it's going back to where it was, at 33, and it might get worse.
Because
just based
that's
on
the trend. That's the trend.
Well, and also based on scenarios, which I'm going to give you some of. Like, not all homeowners that call us have the same set of circumstances. They're all homeowners, but there's all kinds of different things that happen to people, right? But the underlying fact is that there's a lot of homeowners calling now, and so it just tells you, okay, that fun is kind of over, and people are running out of options.
So the point, just to emphasize, the point about when it was zero or close to zero, homeowners had options because we had a run up from 2008 right through till last year of endless value increases in homes. So if you bought something in 2012 and you had some problems in 2017, your house had a shit ton of equity in it.
I didn't solve them for you.
Yeah,
Wasn't
you
me.
solved them yourself. Okay, but now you're seeing what they did. You're seeing the HELOCs. You're seeing the lines of credit.
Yes.
You're seeing the growth in the mortgage
The
amount.
kimono is opened.
Yes, it is.
So now, yes, you're seeing, okay, when I'm talking to somebody and I say, okay, how much is your mortgage, your first mortgage? Because now, I don't just ask how much is a mortgage now. I assume there's more.
There's more. Yeah.
Like I'm asking people if they have crypto now. Because if I don't, I find out later, which is bad. So anyway, first mortgage, maybe a second, maybe a private, maybe a HELOC. Or some combination of thereof, okay? And so that happened over a long period of time. Like that didn't just happen all 6 months ago, right? And so, at some point, people started tapping their homes for, with HELOCs, and HELOC growth was huge. I'm sure you...
Just so everybody's clear, folks, it's a home equity line of credit. It's a line of credit secured by the value of your house.
Yes, it's a revolving line of credit that's like a mortgage, sort of. Basically.
Well, it's not like a mortgage. It's like a credit card.
Well, yes, you're right. It's a secured credit card to your house.
Yep. That's what it is. That's what it is.
And some people actually have cards for them. So,
yes, they do.
Which is part of the issue.
Yeah.
Because it's easy. So, so we're starting to see it's almost like a reverse, effect, right? They're here now, and you can see how it led up, like how, because they tell us, I get them to tell me how they got here.
Yeah.
I don't want to just know what do you owe, what do you own, et cetera, et cetera. I want to know, give me the story, give me some color. There's always a reason people got to where they're at, and that helps me to understand what's going on, helps the creditors to understand what's going on when we're filing. So yes, we're starting to see exactly what happened in those years.
And your observation is when your business dealing with homeowners vanished, is they were self-medicating themselves. They were saying, okay, I've run up these credit cards. I better go. I'll refinance my house.
Yeah.
I really want to do something, and that something could be all the way from something great, like paying for your daughter's wedding, all the way to something frivolous, like I really want to go to Europe for a month. Okay, and that's a HELOC, and you can watch there was a mortgage back when in 2012, and then there was a refinance.
I wonder
in 2014,
if you put two charts next to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Or overlaid charts for HELOC growth, and then maybe there's a lag for like vacations.
Yep, there's that.
Right,
okay.
or watches,
or
whatever. Right.
Jesus, I hope not watches.
You could actually overlay something. Then there might be a gap in time, but that would definitely be a correlation.
Please not watches. But I appreciate what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, so then you're looking at this consistent approach of using a home to refinance financial scenarios.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the home just kept going up.
Yes.
If you bought in 2012, depending where you bought, you might have achieved a triple.
You hit the jackpot, right? In a way. And so there's a couple things, right? There's social competition, which is a big one. Which
exists, absolutely.
If all my neighbors took their kids to Italy,
I gotta.
I'm not gonna do something.
You gotta do it
because kids talk too, and also as we talked about at lunch, the wealth effect,
big time.
That is a massive thing because a lot of this is psychology, right? Like a lot of when I meet with people, it's not therapy because it's more direct.
Yeah.
It's more solution oriented. It's not long term. We're doing something, okay? But a lot of it is psychology, how people got there, what they were thinking that got them into more trouble, why they can't extricate themselves from it. That's all here, right?
Let's wheel back to the wealth effect. But the wealth effect, by the way, for the viewers and listeners, that concept is really a simple one. That if you have had this triple bagger, you've had you bought in 2012. and you bought in 2012 for
$400,000, and your house is now 1.2.
1.2, maybe in at the peak in 21, it was 1.5. Okay, like
I get people to say the full number, by the way.
Yeah,
because I want them to give it the respect it deserves. If they say 1.2, I say, "Do you mean 1,200,000?"
Yeah.
Like, yes, and then I can see their face change a bit if it's a video call or a meeting.
Thank you for that. That's a good
1.2 doesn't work for me. Sorry, it's not 1.2.
Say it out. Say all the
words. We're
words.
not talking in millions.
Say all the words.
Yes, say the word.
So please understand this. That is impactful on your mind.
Yeah.
Okay. It's impactful on. And this really, maybe I should make this point before we go on, and I know Scott will agree with me. There's a group of people who will, barring death or incredible illness, there's a group of people who'll never get in trouble.
Yeah.
There's a group of people who, by their nature, don't overspend.
Yep.
They budget. I know budget is like the worst thing in the world. It's like literally, it's like root canal stuff. But I mean, there's some people who just are naturally worried about their finances at all times, are very methodical in their approach, and they, I don't want to buy that because I'm going to owe that money. And that is a whole plethora of people who are like that, and you will never see them.
Yep.
We will never do a second mortgage for them.
You could argue there's a generation of people like that.
Good, but
most of it.
But I've seen it at many ages. Like, sure, not all, but I've seen it at many ages where people are just extremely conservative, extremely careful about their money, and very fascinated with the idea of growing liquid assets. Mm-hmm. And that's a group. There's a whole big group of people. Yeah. But then there's a whole.
I don't meet them.
There's a whole shit ton of others.
I don't meet any of those.
There's a whole shit ton of others. Okay.
Yeah. And the rest of them are here.
Exactly. And the wealth effect on the others is big, because if you are, and I'm not beating up on any profession here, but I'm just making a simple evaluation. If you are an insurance adjuster and a nurse, and you bought that house for $429,000 in 2012, and you've realized that your neighbors are selling it for $1.2 million, and you know that's an incredible amount of money, a staggering amount of money.
And you'll never make it again.
And you don't have any, you will never save it. You'll never
save it. You'll never make it.
You'll never win a lotto. This is it, but it can have a big impact on your mind of saying, well, fuck, I'm half-assed rich.
I'm loaded.
Okay, I can spend shit. I mean, look at the incredible. And by the way, I'm very, very smart for buying then. Okay, I mean that means I'm, I've clearly.
I had some agency in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I took action.
I had a generational effect that happened, of course, but I bought the house at the right time.
Yeah, I did, and therefore I'm pretty pleased with myself.
I could have not bought the house.
Yeah, I could have. Could be a renter still.
Got the FOMO.
100%. So the wealth effect is the idea that I am loaded. Like, I mean, I might not have any money very much money in my checking account. I might only have $2,000 in my checking account. I might only have.
Well, your balance sheet, you're loaded.
On my balance sheet, I'm loaded.
Cash flow, maybe not.
Cash flow, not so hot. Okay,
and that's where this comes.
But the point I wanted to make about wealth effect is that and as Scott so clearly pointed out, it's what's between your ears as you're thinking about your financial situation.
Yep.
And if you're somebody who was born in somebody who bought a house in 1960, you never have this happen to you, or you had to wait till you were retired.
Yeah.
I mean, you never had between 1963 and 1973, you never had the house triple up.
Well, your $50,000 bungalow in Burlington didn't go to $250.
Nope, did not.
It went to 51, and maybe 53.
Or if you bought perfect, it went to 69 or 74.
You paid your mortgage down, so you had all the 50, but it didn't go to 70 or 100.
Your cash flow got a lot better because you paid your mortgage down. Yeah, all that stuff.
And you probably had at least one, if not two, good jobs that were stable.
Yep.
And you were going to work that job your life, and so was your wife, and that was it.
But you never felt you were loaded. You never felt you had this huge asset that was
a good
worth
point,
so much
right?
money.
This is a whole different experience or phenomenon right now that we're talking about in the last 10 years or 15 years. It's very weird in a sense, because this also didn't happen everywhere, did it? It happened in Canada.
Didn't happen in Saskatoon.
But it happened in most of Canada. But
big cities.
How many countries did houses go up that much all over the world in that time frame?
Well, in central Mexico, not at all.
It's like we were due or something.
Yeah.
We were just so overdue for it or something.
There's a ton of reasons.
A whole bunch of factors just happened.
But the point is a great one, that this is kind of a miracle that happened to people who bought at a particular time. Sure, the head agency, they went out and did it, and you deserve that credit. But it may have given a bad concept in your head about how rich you were.
Yeah, because if it didn't, if you avoided the wealth effect completely, you wouldn't be any of these cases.
Sure, because
a lot of these have equity that I'm going to talk about.
Sure.
But they also have a whole bunch of other debt.
But to Scott's point, you wouldn't have gone through this, what we just talked about, you wouldn't have gone through this financial manipulation.
Yeah.
I'm going to refinance.
Yeah.
I'm going to add a HELOC.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't have done it.
Because you can be very rich on your balance sheet.
Yep.
Your assets, liabilities. And you can be very broke on your cash flow, your income and expenses. And there's two definitions of insolvency. One is the balance sheet. Do you owe more than you own? Are your liabilities greater than your assets?
Net worth is negative.
And the other one is basically cash flow. You can't pay your debts as they come due.
Right.
And the cash flow one is the killer. Because a lot of what I'm going to describe here, people are not insolvent on the balance sheet, but they're damn insolvent on their cash flow.
They can't pay their bills.
Yeah, because they did things that maybe they shouldn't have done, or life got expensive. I mean, the last time I was on here 3 months ago or whatever, we spent a fair bit of time talking about how few people I meet where they're in this situation nefariously.
Sure.
Because my wife's an editor, and I like to use cool words sometimes.
Yeah, nefarious.
In a sentence. Yeah. Nefarious means they got into it because they were, kind of greedy and stupid, and you know what I mean. It's their own fault. Mm-hmm. But most people I meet, by far, just had bad luck. They had events happen to them that were beyond their control. So it's not like, people call us and they're like, oh, you deserve this. Jesus, come on, right? That's not a lot of that, right? Now, I think that may go up with homeowners phoning us just because of the wealth effect.
Yep.
So I think we're going to see more cases where I'm sitting there going, oh, geez, you really could have avoided this. But it's okay. I mean, things happen. And we also talked earlier, you and I, about the perfect storm, right?
This is the concept now of, we've talked about how we got here. Mm-hmm. So now we're going to talk about the rapid change in the last 12 to 18 months, particularly. And all
the shit that's happened to people, to everybody, not just homeowners, but people, the world. You had a generational, hopefully once in a lifetime pandemic. We saw that coming. That wiped things out. It shut down economies entirely.
The big pause.
Yeah. And then you had generational inflation, which is still going on.
Yeah, we hadn't seen that level of inflation for 25 years.
Interest rates that were nothing forever went up a lot, in 10 times in 18 months. That's a lot.
Well, mortgage rates went from people were always used to mortgage starting with a 2, at worst case 3, and all of a sudden some mortgages started with a 6
and a 6. Yeah. And that's shocking to people, right? So and now we're seeing job losses, and so those are 4 biggies. That if they happened over a 10-year period, they'd be bad. If they happened over a 3-year period, that's which is what's happened. So there's been a lot of outside influences on everybody's household and cash flow too.
So for the homeowner who experienced these 14-year run of good fortune, rising equity in their home, and their own situation maybe was flatlined. Maybe they weren't making a ton of extra money, but they did have this home to depend on. And now we enter into, as Scott highlighted, we enter into a world where affordability is tough. Food inflation is still over 3%, and it went up. It's like for over 5 years, it's up 30%. That's as simple as that.
Yep.
And we've got mortgage rates that are up.
Yeah. So if your mortgage went up last year or the year before significantly, then you're also $1,000 a month more broke.
Exactly.
Right? That's a lot.
And
and over time that has an effect, right? The first month is not so bad.
You managed the first month. You managed the first month.
Okay,
it's a shock.
But you knew it was coming too, right? But then second month, third month, fourth month. Think about how many months in a 12-month period you're going to struggle. Probably 3, 4, Like Christmas is a given.
Christmas,
but then
yeah.
you got months like me, my family in May, 3 birthdays, 4 Mother's Days. Those are months where you don't do anything extra, right? And and everyone has them. And when we file proposals are a 5-year event. So I have to look out and say, okay, is this viable not just now, but what's your job like? What's your husband's job like? What's you know what I mean? What's coming, right? Are you going to have to look after elderly parents who are sick? These are things that are real, right? And so I think if your mortgage went up a lot 12 months ago, you're probably hurting now a lot more than 12 months ago.
Right. So we got mortgage payment up. We got general inflation making everything else you need more affordable, right down to your home insurance, your car insurance.
Yeah.
We got the impact of rising mortgage rates. Yeah. We got friggin', you might not be out of work, but you might not be getting overtime anymore. There may be no overtime.
And you're worried.
And you're worried.
Not sleeping.
And you're worried. And now, probably the capper, your house is not worth what it used to be today.
Yeah.
If you're in Ontario, I guarantee it.
Yep.
Your house is not worth.
Yeah. Unless you have a detached house in Toronto.
Yeah, like
your house is down.
Deep 416.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're in 905, if you got a condo, if you're in London, if you're in Windsor.
I live in the West End of Toronto in a house.
Yeah.
And nobody in my neighborhood's house has gone down. Like there's tons for sale, by the way.
If it's gone down 5%,
the listings are shocking.
Yeah.
Like shocking.
Yeah.
There's dozens of them.
Yeah.
But none of them are selling.
Because they won't come down anyway.
Well, they don't, they don't want to sell. They're fishing, right?
They're fishing.
And nobody's buying anyway because nobody's got money to buy.
So this sudden moment where your house is worth less, all of that previous decades worth of refinance, HELOC, you name it, it's over.
Yeah.
It's totally over.
Or at least for a while, yeah.
So tell us, Scott, what happens when people come to you and they're looking for advice and they start to talk about, hey, I had this thing where my bank contacted me and my HELOC, it used to have a $200,000 limit and now it's got a $70,000 limit.
Well, we're talking to way more homeowners as we discussed.
Oh.
We don't need to beat that to death. So I made this little list. Every second call these days, I titled it. Tons of unsecured debt, often including tax. Loads of equity, if you're a homeowner, but also a lot of mortgage debt still. Like you could have tons of equity and still have a lot of mortgage.
You could have a $2 million house, have $1.2 million mortgage, sure.
Yeah, or a $1 million house where you have $600,000 equity, but you still have a $400,000 mortgage. I still appreciate that number. I still respect $400,000.
That's a real payment. That's a real payment.
Often they either just renewed or got killed on rates, and we just talked about this, where if the further back it was, the worse they are now.
Yep.
Because I think what's going to happen here is you're also going to see a macro effect in a year or two where not only have people faced the renewal wall, as we called it, but now they get enough time under their belts that it's hurting them.
Okay, I want to quickly touch on that because it's so important.
Sure.
Your point was excellent. You got through the first 2 or 3 payments that went up $800 a month.
Or even 6.
Yeah, you would, but it just grinds away at you. Well, there's just less money.
When your groceries are $1,300 versus $7.
Yep.
And you can't escape that. I don't care when you go to No Frills, you're still paying a ton for food every month.
Yeah.
And everything else is the same. So unless you gave back your 2 SUVs and are driving 2 shit boxes now for that you bought for cash, probably not much has changed in your house, right? Except for the $1,000 additional mortgage, right? Yep. Okay, so we talked about that. They've borrowed against equity to keep things going for a long time, which is why they didn't call us. Lots of cars financed. This is my pet peeve.
Lots of no cash cars. They are all got a loan on them.
And like the average car loan term is 8 years. Average.
The car's
Rob
dead.
Carrick told me that. I was like, well, you got to be kidding.
Yeah,
average.
Yeah.
Unsecured creditors are calling them and threatening them. That is a big deal now. They're getting harassed, texts all day long, calls all day long, and CRA is included in that. CRA is very aggressive.
Let's hit those two separately because I got a question on that. So, if you're a homeowner, you can end up with a ton of credit cards, right?
You can't, or you can.
You can easily.
Well, in fact, when we study our filings every year. 3,500, 4,000 filings. We study them every year. Joe Detter is released in February. It's a study. And every time, this past February, 2024's numbers were something like Renters have 60,000 on average in unsecured when they come to us.
Yep.
Homeowners have 90.
And that number's going to grow.
So that's 50% more.
Yep.
If you're a homeowner, and it's because you're more creditworthy.
Exactly.
Now, in 2025, banks aren't giving homeowners more credit, but they were doing it for a long time, and it's built up.
And you've noticed that the people who you mentioned to me earlier that
I'm drawing a line so I know where I stop.
You mentioned to me earlier that when a year ago or 2 years ago, when people came in and they had credit cards, they had 6 credit cards, but 2 of them weren't too blown up.
They had room still.
There was room on 2 credit cards.
Because I tell them if they're about to file, especially a proposal, because in a proposal, the creditors vote, and you need them happy. Mm-hmm. And so if you had 15,000 of extra room, came to see me, we filed in 2 weeks, and you just went and spent the 15, that's not good.
Creditors are mad.
Yes.
They're mad.
So I tell people, for God's sake, don't spend the rest. Just leave it as it is. If you can pay your cell bill or something. Like don't do anything weird, right? But now they're mostly maxed out.
So every card's maxed.
Yeah,
by and large.
Yeah, okay. I would say far more than a year ago.
Right.
Yeah. There's just people just don't have room, or they thought they had room, and the bank said, "Guess what? The 9,326 balance you have, that's it.
That's your limit.
Forget
now.
The 20.
Yeah,
there's no 20.
You had a $20,000 limit. It's now your balance. Okay, so you're seeing it. I've talked about it in various posts, and this is the new trend. By the way, the weird part about all that is that the algorithm that's searching to find people to shut down, and they have a lot of people. When I posted about you woke up and your HELOC was gone, that there was a ton of comments which said, yeah, that happened to me, or that happened to my personal, or that happened to my credit card. There's like 50 comments that said, yeah, that happened.
You're below the line.
Yeah. But then there were
you want to be above the line.
There were 10 comments that said, it's weird. Just in the last 3 months, my bank's increased my credit card limit because the algo finds
above the line.
The algo finds the gems. It'll find the gems and want to give you more. Okay.
Well, banks are looking to make money, right? When banks are hurting, and I mean by hurting, I mean we only made $900 million last month in net earnings. Right, but it's all relative, and they report quarterly to the stock market. So of course that's why banks don't look after you when things go bad, right? Because the stock market doesn't disappear when things go bad.
No,
right?
Hell no.
Yeah, no. And a bank CEO has one thing in mind every day when they go to work: the next quarterly report.
100%.
Right? That's what it is. And so you're right. If you're above the line, they're probably shoveling money at you right now because you're in good shape. The ones below the line, they're shutting it off.
But there's so many more people below the line now.
It's a pyramid shape,
right?
Or an iceberg.
Right? Again, seriously, folks. Though, if we opened up a textbook about how a recession happens, we're just giving you the list from the textbook right now. This is how it happens.
Here's the rest of my short list where I stopped. They can't qualify anymore for mortgages or HELOCs.
Big time.
That's the hugest point.
Yep.
Just if you're going to forget everything else I said, remember that. So what do they do other than sell? How many Canadians sell their homes when they're in trouble?
Historically,
it rhymes with zero.
It's about zero. Yeah. They will do anything to stay in their home,
even when they're talking to me.
Yep, they'll do anything.
And when it's painfully obvious that is the solution.
Yep.
Because you have $300,000 more equity than you have credit card debt, which means if I send a proposal to the creditors for 60 months. And I tell them, okay, he'll pay you the whole 100 that he owes in credit card debt, right?
But I think you don't pay 60,000
in a proposal. But but you know that he could sell his house and he could pay you tomorrow. Why would I wait 5 years to get paid?
Yep.
When you could sell your house? Now no one sells their house, but I think that's going to change.
That'll change.
Yeah, it will.
That'll change.
And if enough of those sales happen. Well, maybe the government's talking about actual affordability again instead of making it up.
So, by the way, I just want to hit on that really, Scott is so right when he says this is the important point. If you reach this moment, if you're below the line that we just talked about, you are not getting financing from any normal traditional organization at all. Okay,
maybe a private, but the percentage rate you won't like.
You'll hate it,
and it's a 1 or 2 year loan, and it just you can't. That's not going to work. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say on my short list of what I'm seeing these days, like this week.
And that is, folks, do not forget that part about loss of access to more credit.
Yeah.
Please do not forget that.
That was what the housing boom was all about.
Exactly. When you put in your mind, what's it going to be like in Canada for the next year? Mm-hmm. I want you to hold on to this thought. Because there's a ton of people who are in no trouble at all. Absolutely none. Okay. Yeah. But I'm talking about the Canadian economy, and a Canadian economy where there is now enormously less access to credit is very different than the last 14 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
very
exact
different.
Opposite. Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to touch on one thing before we move back to the homeowners, because this is something that's really just come up.
Before we do story time,
I want to hit on something that has just sort of hit us that we've been hearing about suddenly, literally in the last 3 weeks, is CRA going wild on people.
Yes.
Not everybody, but too many. Okay, you owe CRA some money, and that's typically that's like a self-employed person or a person that's has some contracts.
There's a lot more tax owed now than there ever was before, and that's because of COVID. Okay, there was CERB, and then people didn't. The first round of CERB was paid in gross, not net, so that was a problem because then people ended up owing $4,000 on the $8,000 or $12,000 that they got, right? Yeah. So that happened, but that's kind of sort of weeded out a bit now with time. But generally speaking, the people who owe a lot of tax are self-employed,
right?
Because you can get into way more tax trouble if you're self-employed. That's just
if you don't have source deduction, you can get in a lot of tax trouble.
Well, HST, payroll, corporate tax, all that stuff. Yeah. People on payroll on wages don't have that, right?
But there's and sometimes you're just a guy who builds fences in the summer, mm-hmm. and you're that guy. Okay, yeah. But CRA is if. It's not uniform, but it's certainly the majority. Because as Scott will tell you, there's some people he doesn't understand why they're being left alone.
To sit here and say that CRA are on the warpath is true. They are. They're going after people like I've never seen before. But to find a pattern is hard, if not impossible. There's probably trustees watching this who just laugh their guts out as I said that. It's impossible, okay? Because I've seen CRA go after, a person owing $3,000 as though they were Al Capone. And I've seen them not go after someone owing $300,000 for years. And not all of it is down to collectability. Because the first thing everybody's going to say is, well, if you're self-employed, they can't really get you as easy. I know that, okay? And if you're not a homeowner, if the home's in your wife's name and they can't lien what's not, they can raise a spousal assessment, by the way.
Sure they can.
That's a thing we should probably talk about. But
they can seize your bank account.
They can do all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
And CRA goes through tax court. They don't go through civil court. And that's why it happens now. If CRA wants to do something to you, it happens overnight because they don't go through the regular channels that banks go through.
Yeah, you're getting a couple of letters that you owe them money, and then one day you wake up, there's nothing in your bank account.
Yeah, and they don't even tell you half the time.
No.
It's just like you find out. Every person that tells me their bank was frozen, they found out indirectly.
Yep.
They didn't find out from CRA.
Nope.
They went to do something, and the bank was like, sorry. And so that's bad. Same with liens on houses. I think there's legislation in the Bank Act that says they have to let you know, but it's kind of soft, and they don't always.
But hold on, they can put the lien on and send you the letter at the same time.
And then if the letter comes a week later, and the lien's been sitting there, and guess what? That's I can't help you with that because that is a secured debt now. Yep. It's like a mortgage.
But you are seeing a significant growth in their aggressiveness.
No question.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and in fact, if I worked at CRA, and homeowners in Canada better hope that never happens. If I worked at CRA, I would be leaning houses left and right. I don't know why they don't. Politically, maybe? That's the only thing I can think. Because when I lien your house and you find out, you pay me. But we talked about this earlier, you and I. A lien is like a mortgage. It doesn't get paid out until title transfers.
Correct. Or it must be paid out on title transfers.
Yes, that's what I mean. So if such time as you go to sell your house 10 years from now, it gets paid out. Lawyer pays it.
Yep.
Letter of disbursements, real estate agent gets paid, municipal taxes get paid, lien gets paid, mortgage gets paid, whatever. But there's no immediacy for you to pay CRA.
No, because
if they just liened your house for $20,000 because you owed them $20,000.
Yep.
you don't need to pay it, really. Like, don't kill yourself paying it. Like, as I've talked to people about this, right, where they're like, "Oh, I'm going to pay that next week, and then we'll file a proposal in a month from now on all my other debts." Well, no, you're not going to pay it now, because you should probably focus on paying the proposal, because the lien's sitting there. Right?
Just sitting.
Yeah. So you shouldn't equate a lien from CRA on your house with immediacy. It's not.
Just so you understand, folks.
You can pay it over time.
A lien is just a sort of a marker on your house. Like the government.
It's a charge.
Yeah.
Is what they call it at the land registry.
It's a charge.
Office.
It's a charge.
Like a mortgage.
But think of it as your house is now flagged. You owe this 20. No transaction can occur until you pay that 20.
You can't transfer without paying it.
The same way as property tax. So you haven't paid your property tax for 4 years, and you think, well, maybe they'll miss it when I sell the house.
But they never miss it. But an awful lot of people will pay CRA once there's a lien.
Right, because we in Canada are obsessive about our house. Like we're
also this post-colonial mindset of severe deference to authority, and CRA is kind of the ultimate authority in a lot of people's minds. If you're leaned by CRA, you really wake up and perk up and get moving on things. That gets people moving. That's why if I was a CRA officer, that's what I'd do, because I would see a lot of action.
We're hoping you don't go there.
No, I won't do that.
So, all right, so let's hear some stories from the war.
Story time.
Stories from the war zone.
Okay, story time. So all names have been changed to protect, et cetera, legal boilerplate. Preface to these stories, though. I hesitate to say we can't help anybody who has a lot of equity and less debt, because everybody's circumstances are different. Sometimes we can. Sometimes I end up telling people what they should do for a while, and then maybe later we do something
you can create a plan.
Well, you should still call, is what I'm saying. Because A, it's free advice. B, it's good advice. Sorry, but we're really good at this.
You're a trustee, yeah.
Well, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm completely objective. Like I said earlier, this is not therapy, right? If you start crying during your talk with me, I'm okay. I'm sitting, I've seen that. But we're back to business once you can talk again. Like we're fixing a problem here, and this is very nuts and bolts and cut and dried, and because I have the advantage of looking at this completely neutrally, right? So if you call and we can't quite do anything specifically for you,
so we
can probably still do a lot for you.
For the listeners and the viewers, just to understand that is, Scott alluded to it before. You could have a good balance sheet. You could have a house that's worth $1 million on a $400,000 mortgage or $500,000 mortgage. You have equity. You might only owe you might owe 100 in consumer debt. Okay, but you can't pay it. Okay, but you have. If we did a pro forma on you as a human balance sheet, you're looking okay. You're like plus 300.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Scott has to manage that issue, because he could tell you, you can't pay at all. I seeing that you're at the breaking point.
Well, I tell people you have to sell your house.
Right.
I don't beat around the bush on that.
Yeah.
Like, you need to sell your house. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't sell my house. Why not? Well, I can't get the same kind of place. Well, no, we're not talking about getting the same kind of place.
Much smaller.
We're talking about getting your downsizing, renting. God forbid.
Yeah.
But that is the plain answer here.
Sure.
Okay, because if you have $600 in equity and $100,000 in credit card, you still got $500,000 in your bank after you do that.
In your human bank, yeah.
Yeah,
not your real bank. Not your real bank.
But I'm saying, if you sell your house and pay those debts, you're still really well off.
Well off, yeah.
But we have this mindset. And I think that mindset is going to crack in the next couple of years. It's because it's going to have to.
Because at the end of the day, you can't pay your bills.
And what you can't do is file bankruptcy. I do two things. I do bankruptcies and proposals. Mm-hmm. In a bankruptcy, the assets that are non-exempt vest in the trustee. What that means in plain English is I get your house.
Yep.
Immediately, as soon as you sign the documents.
You're on the
I don't
title.
have to go to court to do it. It's deemed.
Yep.
So if you and your wife are on title and you file, I'm on title with your wife and my job's to sell your house, force a sale, which is all messy, by the way.
No shit.
And your wife divorces you.
No shit.
So there's a whole bunch of reasons that, you don't file bankruptcy, but I tell them that, we move on. Okay. So maybe we do a proposal because assets don't vest. But in a proposal, if you own $600,000 in equity and owe $100,000 unsecured, again, we're back to
your creditors say no.
But a proposal is 5 years. Yeah. So are you saying you're going to pay that 100 over 5 years instead of selling the house and give it to them right now? Right. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense.
No.
But it doesn't mean we can't still guide you through a bunch of things. So every situation is different, and it depends, as with mortgage brokering, I'm sure.
100%.
Where I can't give you a blanket answer on what I would do with something because I have to hear everything, right? Okay. Story time, children. Let's all gather around. So These are instances of people I've spoken to since I was here last.
Sure.
Which I think was February.
Yeah.
It was cold. That's all I know.
It's cold as hell.
And now it's warm. Kevin M., which is made up. Married, owns a home, equity about $160,000. He and his wife took medical and financial care of her father, who was elderly and sick, across the country. That means they both took time off work, substantial. Kids are all grown and gone, okay, but there's just them. But they moved across the country, took a lot of time off work, and paid for a lot of medical. Because if you want to find out how universal medical care is in Canada, try getting sick. Trust me on this. Unsecured debt, $66,000, all credit cards. Bank won't let them use a HELOC or refinance due to income and debt levels.
Just what we talked about earlier.
Yep.
There's no more
He's got
finance.
more equity than he's got unsecured debt. You got to sell your house because you can't borrow against it. You can't file bankruptcy. And if you do a proposal, they're going to say, why wouldn't you pay us right now by selling your house?
Sure.
That's Kevin. Jonas F., which sounds made up, and it is. He's a self-employed contractor. Tax. Sole proprietor, which means there's no legal separation between he and his business. Mm-hmm. And he makes about $100,000 annual gross revenues, minus business expenses, minus taxes, if he's paying them, which he wasn't. $60,000 CEBA loan. And I mentioned he's a sole proprietor, not a corporation.
Right.
Which means he can't walk away from the corporation and open up another one the next day and call it something just slightly different and be rid of that CEBA loan.
Nope.
It's his personally because there's no legal separation.
Yep.
So that's $60,000 is his. $80,000 in HST and personal income tax derived from the business. $20,000 in credit cards, total unsecured debt $180,000. Value of the house is $1,100,000 enunciated long instead of 1.1. Equity is about $330,000. So $330,000 equity and $180,000 in total unsecured debt. That's a problem. Also has the standard $80,000 truck loan. Prior bankruptcy years ago, many years ago, 25.
So he's a double BK.
But it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. The 7-year thing is your credit report.
Yeah.
If you file bankruptcy, it is forever.
Yeah.
In the sense that when you talk to a trustee again, it matters.
100%,
I had a woman who was like almost 90, wanted to do bankruptcy. Of course, I said don't. But her previous bankruptcy was 1974.
Oh, geez.
It's
a while.
Yeah. And the bank won't touch them with a barge pole because to use equity because of what I just read you.
Yep.
So another example of what we're seeing. Kim and Todd, couple, sold their condo in Mississauga. I think you know where that is.
I think I do.
In 2023 and moved into a house in Mississauga. So they upgraded.
Yep, they did.
They went from a condo to a big house. Cool. Got a second mortgage of $115,000, Big Five bank, to cover the extra cost of the bigger house in the upgrading move. The first mortgage is $335,000 from the same Big Five bank.
Definitely.
And they also took out a HELOC from the same Big Five bank of $10,000. So, and they got about $170,000 net equity in the house, the new house. Unsecured debt is $90,000 between them. Some of it's joint. They're both on the mortgage, HELOC, second, all that. All that's joint. And they have the inevitable big truck with the inevitable big truck loan. They also have a Jeep with a Jeep loan, which is almost as bad. And the bank won't give them another cent on their equity because which exceeds their unsecured debt. So,
but they're a little closer to the line, right? Because
I think so.
As
I was reading that, I was thinking about your line.
Their house is going down, but their house is going down in value. If they wait 6 months,
well, two years from now, this will be a very different picture, and that's why you should call. Yeah. Because I would tell you that, right? I would say, okay, look, you can't really do a lot now, right? For the reasons we just talked about. You can't do bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Proposal they'll say, screw you. Bank doesn't want to touch you. But a year from now or 2 years from now.
As your value declines.
Right. And maybe you pay your debts down a little bit, your delta is changing a lot, right? So sometimes.
So when you look at that, just for the audience to understand. So when you look at that person and say, you know what? After we pay real estate commissions.
Yeah.
You're negative.
Like I take sale costs off. Right? Yeah. Like any equity I'm reading about here is pure equity.
So then at that point, you can propose the idea that, okay, you have your choice, consumer proposal, traditional bankruptcy, but I can now file you because you are negative in your balance sheet.
Yeah, or at least closer, And the other thing is, 2 years is a long enough time that a lot of things can happen.
Yep.
What if one of you loses your job?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
File sooner.
Right. So some of this, again, we're allowed to swear here, right?
You can swear your head off. Yeah.
Right. So the reason I ask is, what I don't do is tell people you can't do a bankruptcy proposal, so fuck off.
Yeah.
I never say that.
You give more advice.
I wouldn't say
you
that
tell
to
them the
people
right
anyway.
approach.
But I'm saying there's more than that. I look at this as we're going to get you fixed, but maybe not yet.
Might take a year.
Right. Because you do need to fix this. None of this is going away unless you move to Costa Rica.
No.
Okay. And you're not probably doing that. So usually this is more holistic, I guess. I just said a minute ago, it's not therapy, but now I'm referring to a therapy term. But really, this is looking at someone as a restructuring.
Yep.
Of your personal finances, right?
Yep.
And so maybe now is not right, but maybe down the road is right? And so there's a lot of people can still change banks, do this, make some changes.
Scott will advise you.
Maybe give your car back.
Yeah. But Scott, listen, this is very important.
But these are big deals, right?
Scott will advise you of things you can do to make your life better, even if you don't file for another year.
And it costs nothing.
It costs nothing.
In fact, to the point where I wrote down what I thought was clever. Where is it? I think I have it in my head. Oh, here it is. You have too much equity. Either sell your house or take out a HELOC. Well, you can't take out a HELOC because the bank said you can't. And you don't want to sell your house because you're Canadian. Mm-hmm. We can't sell our house. Where would we live? You could downsize dramatically or rent or move to Costa Rica. Scott, do we owe you anything for this call, for this advice? No, because I only gave bad news. Bad news is free. Only good news costs money. So in other words, if I tell you can file a proposal, it's going to cost you money.
Yep.
But you're going to solve your problem. If I tell you can't do anything right now, it doesn't cost you anything, and my advice is free. So, and you're not going to get free advice very often from people.
No, you're not.
Alicia S. Totally made up. Too much equity, but can't use it. Good career, making $200,000 plus bonuses in a pharmaceutical company.
Jesus.
Single, Toronto. Owns her home, Toronto. It's a loft, which I think is a condo. Mortgage is $383,000. Her equity is $250,000, and her unsecured debt is $106,000. And there's reasons for that. She had some medical issues before, and she ran into some. Like it wasn't just spending like a.
It wasn't frivolous. Yeah.
It wasn't spending like a drunken sailor. It wasn't that. But her mortgage lender won't touch a HELOC or refi because of all these issues, and because it's May 2025. Right, things have changed. So again, another situation where equity, unsecured debt, but unless you tackle it and knuckle down and do something about it, there's not much that can be done from an insolvency standpoint yet, right? But maybe down the road.
Okay. So we're hearing a very clear theme. Mm-hmm. And by the way, when Scott tells you the names are made up, the situations aren't made up. The situations are accurate.
These are actual situations.
Live cases, yeah. So a lot of this has circled back to no more lending. So, I think the moral of the story, the key takeaway is we are in this moment of time where there's no more financing for anybody.
Yeah, it took us a year to see it.
Yeah, no more financing.
Because this time last year, I remember telling people it was starting and coming, right? But I got enough of these under my belt now in the last 12 months that I know that lending has ground to a halt in terms of what we were used to for a decade, right? Because that's a big shift. For a whole decade or more, you could get money if you needed to, if you had a home with equity, and now
good jobs.
It's not a given.
Not a given,
to say the least. It's not a given.
Not a given. So that is the whole essence of the podcast today, because here's the most important thing. It's not getting better next week. It's going to get worse.
Yeah, I think that's important. This is not heading up. It's heading down. And so, I don't like to make it all doomy and gloomy, but none of the factors that are macroeconomic are working in favor of fixing this right now.
None.
So I think we have at least a couple of years where things are going to get worse. And we're still halfway through 2025, and 2025 and 2026 were the 2 years with the most mortgage renewals, I believe.
They are
on a percentage standpoint.
No, they are 100%.
And so people are still going to get kicked in the teeth. And then remember what we said before is it's not the date your payment goes up, it's the 12 months after that, or 18, because now you have all these months where you struggled instead of just 2 or 3. And so that cumulative effect of being cash short all the time can be really bad.
That's the big message. The big message, folks. And by the way, again, most people are not in trouble. Most people, the vast majority of people are not in trouble. But our message to those people is times are changing and financing is becoming unavailable. And there will be more insolvencies. There will be more people who may at some point, as Scott says, they don't want to, but they may reach a point where they have to sell their homes. But the crucial message is, in a declining credit cycle where there's less credit available every day, that's an economic slowdown. That's the nature of it. This is why banks do this now, why they're cutting back on limits before people are not in any trouble. They're not in trouble. They just have bad trends, okay? But they're not missing a payment, okay?
Yeah.
This is important to understand. The credit cycle a tightening credit cycle doesn't mean you're not going to get a mortgage if you're a perfect person. If you are a young person with a great job, you're a physician who just graduated, you're somebody who just got promoted as a cop, your spouse is a nurse, and now you're looking for your first home, and your income's solid, you're going to get your mortgage to buy your home.
Yeah.
But all the rest of it,
Yeah.
no, you're not.
And all of the situations I just described too are situations where there's much more equity than unsecured debt. There are at least as many people calling us with negative equity.
So that's the other. Glad you finished on this. Glad you finished on this one, Scott, because I didn't want to miss this.
Because house prices have gone down. And all those people who were leveraged right, like 90% LTV or worse, right, skinned right to the teeth in 2022 or 3 or 1, right, where it was just about to go like that, they're all skinned and they're minus in equity now.
Now, I can't miss this point because this was a super important point that came out of our pre-podcast talk. You are talking to people who have a new construction condominium closing a year from now.
Yeah.
And they're planning how to escape from this disaster.
Yeah. So this is not 3 months ago we talked about this,
Yep.
or whenever it was I was on last. So at that point, I think it was all just, people, okay, I can't close. I got to call you. But it's now I can't close or soon.
It hit.
But now I have people calling who know they're not going to close next year when the building's done, because they're hearing all this in the media. So they're starting to think about it, right? They're starting to go, maybe I should check on this. Like, am I going to be able to do this, right? How much has it gone down since they started digging, right? And so they're actually planning ahead that they are going to lose their deposit and possibly, most likely, get sued by the developer.
And the reason they're talking to you is that under the right set of circumstances, you eliminate the lawsuit.
Yeah, and I corrected somebody today on this. Someone who should have known better had said that filing an insolvency doesn't stop that lawsuit. Stop giving bad advice if you don't know what
That's
you're talking
terrible
about.
advice.
Jesus,
Terrible
stop
advice.
doing that. Because how many people read that?
Yeah.
Okay? It does, right? That's why when there's a shortfall, it goes into the proposal or bankruptcy. And if you get a lawsuit, it's an unsecured debt.
If you get that letter.
Now, if the lawsuit goes long enough and they
get a judgment,
and they get a judgment and lien a house that you have that's not
different.
the condo, that's a secured debt.
And that's
I can't
a
do
long
anything about
process.
that.
That's a long process.
Oh yeah, and most people who just bought pre-condos don't also own houses, right? So like I realize there's an investor.
A lot of them do.
Well,
own
okay,
stuff.
the investor class. But so for those guys that are watching this, if you bought 1 or 2 pre-built condos and you actually live in your house as well, or maybe own another one and have equity. If those condos that are pre-built don't close and you get sued and you wait long enough, that judgment will become a lien on your house. And then I can't help you.
So please, everybody, by the way, everybody in the financial community who listens to the podcast, understand this very key point that people are now, it's gone to the point where people are planning for the condo crash, but 14 months from now.
Yeah.
They
know the build date roughly,
yeah,
right?
They know the finish date.
Okay, maybe it got delayed and slowed down, whatever. But they roughly know when it's going to be. And they also know their finances.
Yep.
And they know that the values have dropped. If you know those 3 things.
So critically, people in finance hear this. this thing about the condo crash is today, it's next month, it's the balance of this year, but it's also moving into next year, because here's what we thought and we've discovered.
Because what does it take to build a condo building?
6 years.
4, 5, 6 years?
6
yeah,
years,
okay.
yeah. So what we're discovering today that didn't happen 6 months ago, didn't even happen 4 months ago, but is now today, and Scott's confirmed it, people are planning to not close on the condo. They're looking for their options. They're studying how it has to be arranged. They're looking at, because they're also seeing that their own house value is declining slowly, not drastically, but slowly.
Yeah, but it's not going up.
Not going up.
And that is the key shift in the mentality, right? It used to be going up all the time. Now it's coming down. Maybe still got a bit of equity, but am I still going to have that equity by the time the condo closes?
So everybody
or is built.
Everybody listen to this, because this is the insight into the future. 1 year from now, we are going to have a huge cadre of condo buyers who are prepared not to close. Mm-hmm. They're not panicked. They've studied it. They're ready not to close. Yeah. And that means 80% of the building will close. Not 20%, not
50
30%.
or 40, yeah.
80% of the building won't close.
Yeah.
This is the real nugget to take out of today. Scott, thank you.
Can I give you a couple of acronyms before we go?
Sure, give me an acronym.
Because I thought I'd end this on a funnier note. So last time I was on and you and I had lunch, we talked about this. So we were talking about how if there's no money, no one gets paid in bankruptcy, except I get paid for administrating. Yeah. Nobody gets anything. If there's no equity and you don't have, other assets that are non-exempt and your income's low and whatever, no prior bankruptcies. So we called it fuck all is fuck all.
That's what it is, yeah.
The FIFA.
FIFA. Fuck all is fuck all.
And you can put this maybe on the screen for the podcast.
I will.
There's the VDAC. The value is down and I can't close.
That's coming.
This one I like. NADISMA. No equity, developer is suing my ass. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
NADISMA.
So
no equity.
I'm going to start peppering social media with some of these so that maybe one of them will stick.
I love it.
Probably not, because they kind of suck. But
Scott, thank you. And listen, if for those who want to know the future, this is where the trend begins. And now, maybe not, what was it, Divisma?
Or know the present, the NADISMA.
Yeah.
No equity developer is suing my ass. If you want to know about the NADISMA.
Maybe not that's going to become well known in a year, but the trend of people being prepared not to close is guaranteed to go up. Scott, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show again. It's my pleasure. It's always a good one. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
If you like the pod, well, don't just sit there. Go to YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all the other ones and like the pod. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep being angry at mortgages and swearing about mortgages. Angry Mortgage could use your support.